Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a drama from Australia, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by Jennifer Kent, and this film is called The Nightingale. So The Nightingale is set in the colonial period in Australian history. You've got the British who are overseeing the Irish convicts and the constant attacks from Indigenous Australians. And so in Van Diemen's Land, which is now known as Tasmania, you've got this Irish convict who's this beautiful woman. She has a family, a husband and a young child, and she lives under the constant fear of the people who are basically leading them, and that is the British soldiers. And so this British lieutenant especially, he's very depraved, and he sees this Irish convict as his property. And so the husband doesn't like this, and the husband is trying desperately in order to win the freedom of his wife so they can have a brighter future, but the lieutenant is basically having none of it. So there is an altercation between the husband and the lieutenant that results in very catastrophic consequences that tears everything that this young Irish convict has. So she is left absolutely destroyed by what's going on, and the lieutenant basically doesn't care. So he actually wants to get a promotion, and in order to get a promotion, he's going to have to travel up north. So he goes through the Tasmanian wilderness with his henchmen in order to try and get that promotion, and is leaving this woman to deal with the horrific reality that she's now facing all on her own. So she is trying to fight the inner fury that she has, but she's finding it too difficult. She wants justice, and she knows that they're going to go unpunished unless she punishes them herself. So she teams up with an Aboriginal tracker, and they venture through the wilderness after them in order to try and get that revenge and hopefully get that justice that she is so sorely seeking. So whether or not she is able to achieve this and actually feel better as a result is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Nightingale. This is, without a doubt, one of the most harrowing experiences I've had in a very, very long time. This is an extreme film, so be very, very careful. This lives up to the hype that was surrounding this movie when it first came out. A lot of people walked out in the theatres in the premiere of this film, and that was something that really gave my attention, is that as far as Australian cinema is concerned, not many movies do this. Not many movies have enough to provoke an audience in order to try and walk out. And so when I heard about this, I thought, all right, well, is this the film that Australia needs, or is it a victim of being overhyped? So Jennifer Kent is a very interesting director. She directed a horror film called The Babadook. Now, The Babadook I thought was slightly overrated, although it was definitely a memorable Australian horror experience. At least it was something a little bit different. Now, I've said time and time again with Australian cinema that it's all the same. It's all watered down, fluffy kind of romance crap. And it's made for television, and it's not willing to take any risks. But then ever since Wolf Creek came out, you got Wolf Creek, Snowtown, Killing Ground. A lot of these movies really push the envelope as far as the endurance of an audience. And I definitely think The Nightingale blows that barrier completely out of the water. I think this is one of the most, if not the most disturbing film to ever come out of my country. And I don't say that lightly. This is a movie that really shook me. I wasn't expecting how far Jennifer Kent would actually take the audience. And what I liked about the extremity in this film is that yes, it will upset. Yes, it is extremely hard to watch, but it doesn't really go over the top as far as gore. It doesn't go over the top as far as graphic material. A lot of it's implied. And that's giving respect to what the violence is trying to do in this film. And what the violence is trying to do is give you an indication of the harsh realities that everyone is facing. Whether it's the Irish convicts at the hands of these brutal British soldiers, or whether it's the isolation and the boredom that these British soldiers were facing, or whether it's the harsh things that these Indigenous Australians had to go through and still go through today. And so I thought that, all right, well, at least the extremity in this movie is so much more than just being rebellious. It's so much more than just trying to make a name for itself and shocking an audience without any content behind it. And it makes it even more shocking that the violence and the extremity in the movie has a lot going behind it, is that it has a very strong purpose, and that strong purpose just elevates that level of disturbing quality to a point where I actually thought it was almost unbearable. A lot of people in the cinema that I was in actually gasped, especially in one particular scene. There is one particular scene that I thought, all right, well, Jennifer Kent's going to take us down that avenue, but she's not going to go all the way. And she actually does. And I thought, all right, well, all bets are off. And yeah, this is a movie that really took me out of my comfort zone, and that's saying something because I'm a fan of extreme cinema. So I definitely think that the extremity in this movie had a very strong, solid point. And Jennifer Kent even said in an interview, violence is not supposed to be easy to watch. Violence isn't supposed to be caricature. Violence isn't supposed to be entertaining. And yes, I love entertaining violence, as is the case with a lot of horror fans, but when you're actually trying to give you basically a film about Australian history and and a movie that does tackle a lot of themes that are very important to us as Australians, I thought that the realistic manner that she portrays this violence in gives the overall respect levels that this movie needed. And if the respect levels weren't there, it's almost kind of like making fun of it. It's entertaining, it's glorifying violence that really hit Australia very hard. And so I think that the violence was used absolutely perfectly. Is that, yes, it does go very, very far as provoking an audience, but I definitely thought that it was there for a reason. It wasn't glorifying anything, it wasn't explicit, but it was just some of the most damaging scenes that I have ever seen in any film. So you've got beautiful cinematography, and the cinematography was a contrasting difference to reality in this movie. You got the harsh doings of humanity, you know, the ugliness of humanity, and you've got the sheer beauty of Tasmanian wilderness. And the sheer beauty of the nature is being overridden by the ugliness of humanity, so it has a very strong haunting presence. And that haunting presence just captivates you. It's beautiful, yet it's very, very ugly. And it was something that I thought, all right, well, this is... I'm marvelling at the beauty of Australia, but at the same time there is something that is just dragging it down, and it just makes it a very morbid atmosphere that this director manages to create. And again, it symbolises the times that this movie is depicting. You've got fantastic performances from the main actor, the actors. You got Ainsley Franciosi, who is an Irish actress. She plays someone that's incredibly sympathetic, and what I liked about her transformation from victim to avenger is that it's not a caricature. It's not like I Spit in Your Grave, where she's exacting this revenge and she turns into a mindless killing machine. I could feel the inner torment that this woman had. She wanted to avenge her loved ones, but she felt as though, all right, well, this is tearing me apart. Is that ultimately she was a very sweet and innocent person, and you just can't flick a switch and turn into a killing machine with no repercussions. And I thought there were repercussions behind every act of violence in this film, so it was very carefully orchestrated, and I really went on the journey with her. You've got a fantastic performance from the Aboriginal tracker. I thought their friendship was very beautiful, and it was the only beautiful thing in this film, but once again the ugliness was overriding that beauty, so it gives you that sense of tragedy. You've got a fantastic performance from the villain, played by Sam Claflin. He's a very well-known British actor. I thought his character was a little bit of a caricature. It was very cartoonish, which is something I didn't quite like, but he plays the role to perfection. He's basically the devil himself, and I thought he was a very scary and very, very despicable man. But I also liked the henchmen in this film. Now, the henchmen gave a quality of sympathetic nature as well, and so when horrible things are happening to them, I had a very strange sense that, all right, well, I'm sympathising for them. Although they did horrible things that basically brought on this violence, I still thought as though they were human beings, and I really connected to one scene in particular of violence that made it even more uncomfortable. And so it's not cathartic violence, it's not violence that makes you feel good, which is basically making this rape revenge kind of film so much different from films such as I Spit in Your Grave. So you've got the score that I thought was incredibly haunting. It's just an incredibly haunting experience, and it's an experience that I'll never forget. And that's something that I absolutely loved as far as Australian cinema is concerned. I thought the ending just left on a very bleak, sour note, and I thought, all right, well, this is a really cruel and ugly film, but at the same time, you marvel at the captivating beauty that it has that just forces you to watch what was going on. If I have problems with the film, they're very minuscule. As I said, the lead villain was very caricature. He didn't really have any redeemable qualities, which is a little bit different from his henchmen. And I also thought that the movie goes for a little bit too long. It's 2 hours and 27 minutes or so. And I thought that if it cut it down to maybe 2 hours or 2 hours 10, it could have been a little bit better. It could have brushed up with the editing a little bit more. But pushing those criticisms aside, this is an incredibly important Australian film. It's an indication that Australia still have what it takes to really shock an audience and really put its neck on the chopping block, and saying that this is a very provocative film. I'm not going to make any apologies for it, and it's just an indication that Australia has what it takes as far as really captivating and really shocking an audience, but shocking them for reasons other than just there for the sake of it. And so I thought this is an incredible experience, but it's a very harrowing experience. It's one of the most disturbing and intense movies that I've seen in a very, very long time, and as a result of that, I'm going to give The Nightingale 4 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.